Christmas, 1970s. Memphis, Tennessee. A woman's house burns to the ground. She escapes with her children, but everything they own is gone. No furniture, no clothes, no toys, nothing. Just days before Christmas. A few days later, there's a knock at her door. A man she's never seen before is standing there with keys in his hand. "Ma'am, I have an apartment for you," he says. "It's fully furnished. 6 months' rent is already paid. There are clothes for your children and toys under a Christmas tree. Everything you need." The woman stares at him, tears streaming down her face. She can barely speak. Who did this?" she finally asks. The man smiles gently. "Santa Claus did it, ma'am. Santa Claus did it." But Santa Claus didn't do it. Elvis Presley did. And the man standing at her door had strict instructions to make absolutely certain she would never find out. This is the story of Elvis's secret generosity, the kind that didn't make headlines, didn't get photographed, didn't win him any awards. The kind of generosity that came from a place so pure, Elvis made sure no one would ever know it was him. The person telling this story isn't a tabloid journalist. It's not a biographer trying to sell books. It's Billy Stanley, Elvis's stepbrother, who lived at Graceland, traveled on tour with Elvis, and witnessed his brother's extraordinary generosity firsthand for 17 years. Billy Stanley was 7 years old in 1960 when his mother, Dee Stanley, married Vernon Presley. Vernon's first wife, Elvis's mother Gladys, had died 2 years earlier in 1958, leaving Vernon devastated and alone. When Vernon married Dee, Billy and his 2 brothers, David and Ricky, suddenly found themselves with a new father and a very famous stepbrother. Billy remembers that first meeting vividly. He and his brothers had no idea who Elvis Presley was. They were military kids who didn't listen to much radio or go to movies. When their mother told them they were going to meet their new daddy's son, they imagined meeting someone like them, maybe just an older teenager. Instead, they walked into Graceland and came face to face with the biggest star in the world. Elvis had his back turned when they entered. Billy remembers being scared for a moment, but when Elvis turned around, he immediately laughed, not at them, but with pure joy, and lifted all 3 boys up in one embrace. "Daddy, I've always wanted a little brother," Elvis said to Vernon, grinning from ear to ear, "and now I've got 3. That night, Elvis talked with the boys for hours, getting to know them, joking with them, treating them like they mattered, like they were really his brothers. Then he tucked them into bed himself, something that touched Billy deeply because his own biological father had never done that. The next morning, Elvis came bursting into their bedroom like a fire drill. "You gotta get up! You gotta get up!" he shouted excitedly. "Come outside! We got something in the backyard!" The 3 boys stumbled out of bed, still in their pajamas, rubbing the sleep from their eyes. Elvis grabbed them and practically carried them outside. When they got to the backyard, they stopped in their tracks, mouths hanging open. There were 3 of every toy imaginable: bicycles, wagons, toy cars, board games, baseball bats and gloves, footballs, everything a kid could dream of, mountains of toys. Elvis had gone out in the middle of the night, had a store opened up just for him, and bought 3 of everything. Not because it was Christmas or a birthday, not because he was trying to impress anyone, just because he wanted to make 3 little boys happy. Billy Stanley would later say, "We thought the guy was Santa Claus when we first met him." And in a way, he was. That generosity wasn't a one-time thing. It was who Elvis was at his core. As Billy grew up at Graceland and eventually went to work for Elvis in 1971 at age 18, he witnessed countless acts of generosity, some public, most private. He saw Elvis give away over 100 Cadillacs over the years to friends, family, and complete strangers. He saw Elvis hand his entire wallet of cash to a homeless man on the street. He saw Elvis buy wheelchairs for disabled fans, pay medical bills for people he'd never met, and send money anonymously to families who were struggling. But the story about the woman whose house burned down was different. That story made Billy Stanley cry when he told it decades later, in 2022, while promoting his book, The Faith of Elvis, a story only a brother can tell.
"He was the most generous giver I've ever met in my life," Billy said, his voice breaking with emotion. "Giving money, cars, and homes to people he didn't even know." It was sometime in the 1970s. Billy couldn't remember the exact year, but it was definitely during the Christmas season. Memphis was cold. Holiday decorations were up around the city. Families were preparing for Christmas Day. And somewhere in Memphis, a house caught fire. The details of the fire itself are lost to history. Billy didn't know the woman's name, didn't know exactly where she lived, didn't know how the fire started. What he did know was that a woman and her children barely escaped with their lives. They got out of the house, but that was it. Everything else was gone. Their furniture, their clothes, their photographs and mementos, the children's toys, the Christmas presents that had been hidden away, everything that made that house a home, destroyed. And it was just days before Christmas. Someone told Elvis about it. Maybe he read about it in the newspaper, maybe he heard about it through someone he knew in Memphis, maybe a friend mentioned it in passing. However he found out, the story hit him hard. Elvis had lost his mother Gladys in 1958. He understood loss in a way most people couldn't. He knew what it felt like to have something precious taken away from you without warning. He knew what grief felt like. He knew what it was like to feel helpless. But unlike when his mother died, this was something he could do something about. Elvis didn't hesitate. He didn't form a committee or launch a fundraising campaign. He didn't call the newspapers to let them know the king of rock and roll was helping someone in need. He didn't want any credit, any publicity, any recognition whatsoever. He called one of his guys, one of the Memphis Mafia members who worked for him, and gave him a mission. "I need you to do something for me," Elvis said. "Find that woman whose house burned down. Find her a nice apartment, a good one, somewhere safe." "Yes, sir," the man said. "Then I want you to pay for 6 months of rent, up front, all of it." "Got it." "Then furnish it, everything, beds, couches, kitchen table, chairs, everything a family needs. Make it a home. I'll take care of it. Get clothes for the kids, whatever sizes they need. Get enough for a while. And toys. It's Christmas. Get them toys. Put up a little Christmas tree. Make it nice." The man was writing everything down, already planning how he would make it happen. Then Elvis gave him the most important instruction of all. "When you give her the keys," Elvis said, his voice very serious, "if she asks who did this, and she will ask, you tell her Santa Claus did it. That's all you say. Santa Claus did it." "Santa Claus?" "That's right," Elvis said firmly. "Santa Claus did it." So the man went to work. He found a decent apartment in a safe neighborhood. He paid for 6 months of rent with cash that came from Elvis's pocket. He went furniture shopping and filled the apartment with everything a family would need. Beds with fresh sheets and blankets, a couch and chairs for the living room, a dining table, kitchen supplies, lamps, towels, everything. He went to clothing stores and bought clothes for the children, shirts, pants, dresses, shoes, coats. He didn't know their exact sizes, so he got a range of sizes to make sure something would fit.
He bought toys, dolls and trucks and games and stuffed animals. He got a small Christmas tree and decorated it. He put the toys underneath it, wrapped in colorful paper. He made that apartment look like a home, a place where a family could start over, where children could feel safe again, where a mother wouldn't have to worry about where they would sleep or what they would eat. And then he went to find the woman. She was staying temporarily with relatives or friends. Billy didn't know the exact details, but she was scared and overwhelmed, trying to figure out how she would rebuild her life, how she would provide for her children, how she would make Christmas happen when they had nothing. When the man knocked on her door and explained that he had an apartment for her, she thought it was a mistake or a scam. People don't just give away apartments. People don't pay 6 months of rent for strangers. This couldn't be real. But the man had the keys in his hand. He had the address written down. He was completely serious. "Ma'am, it's all taken care of," he said gently. "The rent is paid, it's furnished, there are clothes and toys for your children. You can move in today if you want, right now." The woman started crying. She couldn't help it. The weight of everything she'd been carrying, the fear, the stress, the uncertainty, suddenly lifted. Someone had helped her. Someone had seen her struggle and decided to do something about it. "Who did this?" she asked through her tears. "Who are you? Who paid for all of this?" The man remembered Elvis's instructions. This was the crucial moment. This was why Elvis had been so specific about what to say. He smiled at her, a warm, genuine smile. "Santa Claus did it, ma'am," he said softly. "Santa Claus did it." The woman stared at him, confused at first. Santa Claus? But then she understood. Whoever did this, whoever this generous, mysterious benefactor was, wanted to remain anonymous. They didn't want thanks. They didn't want recognition. They just wanted to help. So she accepted the answer. She took the keys. She moved into the apartment with her children. She clothed them in the new clothes. She watched them open the presents under the little Christmas tree. She made them dinner at the kitchen table. She tucked them into beds with fresh sheets. And she never knew it was Elvis Presley who had done it all. Years later, when Billy Stanley told this story in a 2022 interview, he got emotional thinking about it. Even decades after Elvis's death, the memory of his brother's generosity moved him deeply. He didn't want the recognition for it, Billy said, his voice thick with feeling. That's what made it so special. He didn't want her to know it was Elvis Presley. He didn't want credit. He just wanted to help. That single phrase, "Santa Claus did it," perfectly captured who Elvis really was when the cameras weren't rolling. He was a man who believed in helping people quietly, without fanfare, without expecting anything in return. This wasn't an isolated incident. Billy Stanley witnessed Elvis's generosity constantly during his years at Graceland and on the road. He remembered one night when Elvis saw a homeless man on the street in Las Vegas. Most people walked past without a second glance, but Elvis told Billy to turn the car around. When they pulled up next to the homeless man, Elvis asked Billy to grab his wallet. When Billy handed it over, he was shocked by how thick it was, stuffed with bills, so much cash you couldn't even bend the wallet.
"How much should I give him?" Billy asked. "All of it," Elvis said without hesitation. "All of it?" Billy couldn't believe it. "All of it." So Billy handed the entire wallet to the homeless man, who recognized Elvis immediately. "Mr. Presley, I'm a big fan," the homeless man said, stunned. "I've watched all your movies, listened to all your music." Elvis smiled at him. "Then this is my way of paying you back for watching my movies and listening to my music." As they drove away, the homeless man called out, "God bless you, Mr. Presley." Elvis looked back and said something that made Billy cry right there in the car. "Sir, he already has." Billy sat there with tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by his brother's generosity and humility. Here was the biggest star in the world, treating a homeless stranger with dignity and respect, giving away everything in his wallet without a second thought, and thanking the man as if he were doing Elvis a favor. That was the real Elvis. But that generosity came from somewhere deep inside him, from his upbringing, from his faith, from the lessons his mother Gladys had taught him before she died. Elvis grew up dirt poor in Tupelo, Mississippi. His family lived in a 2-room house, not 2-bedroom, 2-room,
that his father Vernon had built with borrowed money. There were times when the Presley family didn't know where their next meal was coming from, times when Elvis wore hand-me-down clothes that didn't fit right, times when they had nothing. Elvis never forgot that. Even after he became wealthy beyond imagination, even after he owned Graceland and had everything money could buy, he remembered what it felt like to be poor. He remembered what it felt like to need help and not know where it would come from. So when he saw someone struggling, really struggling, not just inconvenienced but truly in need, he couldn't help himself. He had to do something. He had the money, he had the resources, so why wouldn't he help? And his mother Gladys had taught him to be generous. She had taught him that if you have more than you need, you share it with people who don't have enough. She had taught him that kindness matters more than money, that how you treat people defines who you are, that helping someone without expecting anything in return is one of the most important things you can do in this life. Elvis never forgot those lessons, even in his darkest periods, when he was struggling with addiction, when his marriage was falling apart, when his health was declining. He never stopped being generous. Billy Stanley also witnessed Elvis's deep faith. Most people don't know this about Elvis, but he was a Bible-carrying Christian. Wherever he went, he took his Bible with him. Billy's job on tour was literally to carry Elvis's Bible, and he often saw his brother on his knees praying. He read the Bible almost every day, Billy said. After every concert, when most performers would go party or go to sleep, Elvis would stay up singing gospel songs until the sun came up. Gospel music was his first love, before rock and roll, before fame, before everything. Those hymns connected him to something pure, something transcendent, something that reminded him of who he really was underneath all the glitter and spectacle. That faith informed his generosity. Elvis didn't help people to look good or to get tax deductions or to build his brand. He helped people because he believed it was the right thing to do. He believed God had blessed him with success, and with that blessing came a responsibility to bless others. A lot of people don't realize that, Billy said years later. They see the Elvis who made movies and performed in Las Vegas. They see the Elvis who dated beautiful women and wore rhinestone jumpsuits, but they don't see the Elvis who prayed every day, who read his Bible, who was in touch with the Lord. That was the real Elvis.
The tragedy is that Elvis's generosity contributed to his financial problems later in life. He gave away so much money, so many cars, so many houses, so many anonymous donations, that he was often cash poor despite making millions. Colonel Tom Parker had to keep booking tours and shows to generate income because Elvis kept giving it all away. But Elvis didn't care. He couldn't care. When he saw someone in need, he had to help. It was compulsive almost. He couldn't walk past suffering without doing something about it. On August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley died at Graceland at age 42. The official cause was heart failure, but everyone knew the real cause was years of prescription drug abuse and the grueling schedule that had destroyed his health. Billy Stanley wasn't working for Elvis at the time. He had decided to try to make it on his own, to step out from his famous brother's shadow. When he got the news that Elvis was gone, he was devastated. "I always thought he was going to outlive me," Billy said, his voice breaking. "I never thought of it, and when it actually happened, it just devastated me so bad that I didn't know how to grieve at the time, and I turned to alcohol and drugs." Billy spiraled downward after Elvis's death. He couldn't process the grief. He couldn't accept that his brother, this larger-than-life figure who had always seemed invincible, was gone forever. But then he had a dream. In the dream, he was talking to Elvis. He looked at him and asked, "What does it feel like being dead?" Elvis looked back at him and said, "Don't you know?" Billy woke up in a cold sweat. He realized he was slowly killing himself the same way Elvis had. He was destroying his life with drugs and alcohol, choosing death over life.
That dream saved him. He entered treatment and got sober, and he decided to honor his brother's memory by telling the truth about who Elvis really was. Not the tabloid version, not the gossip version, but the real man Billy had known for 17 years. In 1989, Billy wrote a book called Elvis, My Brother. In 2022, he wrote another book called The Faith of Elvis, a story only a brother can tell. Both books focus on the side of Elvis that most people never saw, his faith, his generosity, his deep kindness. What we saw on his entertainment level was maybe 20–30% of what he really was, Billy said. He was far greater than that. He was a God-fearing patriot and a great big brother. The things he taught me about life I've never forgotten. One of those lessons came just 2 days before Elvis died. Billy was at Graceland visiting, and Elvis was helping him bandage up a minor injury in the bathroom. As they looked at each other in the mirror, Elvis suddenly asked a question that took Billy by surprise. "Do you believe God forgives us for all our sins?" Elvis asked quietly. Billy was stunned. Why was Elvis asking him this? Did he know something? Did he sense that his time was running out?